You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens Fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello everybody to one of those miserable shows that we're going to do. We've got Grumpy Pants Matt one corner, we've got miserable Duncan in the other corner, and me pretty much wasn't at the showdown, but 5 minutes before the end of the game I had to go down to town and book myself in for a tattoo, and that'll be a lot less painful having a tattoo done, I think, than watching that game, which we will cover in the third part of this. I mean, we're saying we're calling this show The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. First up, Matt, Duncan, you still miserable?
Yeah.
I thought as much. Look, guys, shall we do the good first, which is to have a quick chat about the Six Nations for the women that started. And when I say the good, I'm also going to go into a bit of the bad. The good, Rosie Gallagher, Percy, I felt she got robbed of player of the match. Maddie Fianati had a pretty good game, but also did butcher a couple of tries. Rosie Gallagher was absolutely outstanding for England on the weekend, wasn't she?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, she was everywhere. I mean, she is always quite a noticeable player on the pitch, but yeah, the amount of tackles that she made, the amount of time she was popping up in very good places around the ruck, she just seemed to be everywhere. So making meters with players on her back. Yeah, really good day for her. Fantastic.
It's quite an interesting one because the other player who came on, I thought, who did really, really well, made a lot of hits in the 15 minutes she was given, was Lady Mae Campbell, Matt. I mean, she had a really huge influence on the game, I felt.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, she'd been rewarded for her form this season, and something we discussed on the show, in fact, with May herself, was the fact that there are players within that England setup who are full-time professional rugby players, and she's got to try and break into that as a part-time player, and she's managed to get herself ahead in the pecking order of Connie Powell, who is one of those players. So yeah, just deserved. And yeah, those 15 minutes she did absolutely nothing wrong. She hit all of her marks in the line out, which is all she really asked for your hooker coming on. And yeah, plenty of hits and plenty of rucks. The usual Mae Campbell story, really.
It was, yeah. I thought she did fantastic. She deserves to stay in it. However, the England performance wasn't fantastic. There was an awful lot of changes. And I think John Mitchell used this game as an opportunity to see some new combinations, some new ideas, some new players. Got a couple of the girls from Exeter who haven't played for a while, who came in, did okay, didn't do okay. Had a bit of a mixed baggage. But I just felt England tried too hard to put lots of points on and failed miserably at it. The accuracy was not there, particularly in the backs when it came to the standoff position, which I actually think was a good game for our standoff to miss, really, wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah. It was a good first half. It was a very good first half, really. But then, yeah, just the second half, just all cohesion just seemed to desert them for a while. I mean, the selection itself, I've not really got any issues with. You can see what John Mitchell was doing, like say, trying a few new things, a few new players in a Six Nations where, let's face it, barring a disaster, we have a game against France to decide who wins it. The other games, you've got to try a few bits to stand you in good stead going into a World Cup, give some players some experience. So that is fair enough. But yeah, it just didn't seem to click at all in that second half. And that's with, a smattering of Gloucester players who've obviously won the league this season, and players that have been around the England setup for a long time, the likes of Holly Aitchison and Emily Scarrett, who they've had much better games than that. So yeah, it was tricky to see what really went wrong in that second half, but it wasn't fantastic, no.
No, it wasn't. It was also noticeable as well that York is going to be a stadium used in the World Cup. Only have one screen. If you're looking at the Opta stats, the referee did more yards than anybody else, trotting backwards to have a look at the screen for replays. I mean, poor girl must have been absolutely shattered at the end of the afternoon.
Well, I thought she might have been, yeah, but I had to look her up because I did notice that she was actually taller than all of the players on the pitch, including the second rows. And yeah, she's a former Sevens player, so presumably is used to doing a full-length run of the pitch. But yeah, it did seem a bit bit tricky. So, yeah, hopefully they can bring in even just a small screen at another end of the ground for the World Cup.
Yeah, well, it would be sensible, wouldn't it? And the last point I want to make about the England game is, and I am loath to call people up, but Sonia McLaughlin really needs to work on her professionalism. Holding everything together was quite honestly abysmal. And the amount of times she called Simon Middleton John Mitchell and John Mitchell Simon Middleton was ridiculous, really. When there are so many really good people, like Sarah Orchard on comms was excellent. Maggie Alfonsi, Katie McLean, they're all really, really good. You've got Gabby Logan, you've got Jill Douglas, all these people around it, all Chenway, whatever. And Sonia really is. I'm loath to do it, but she doesn't add anything to the coverage for me.
Was she trying to be funny again?
I don't know what she was trying to be. It wasn't a professional anchor woman, I'm afraid to say, Duncan.
I was putting a kettle on at the time, so I don't think I can comment.
Oh, you sit on that fence, Matt. You sit on that fence. Shall we say that's the good and the bad over and done with? And we'll play in one of our little jingles and we'll do the ugly, which obviously is the showdown.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
You're listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association. And I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the Stonex.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back. And we've done the good, we've done the bad. Now is time for the ugly. I'll let you, dear listener, decide which one of us three is the ugly, but certainly what was ugly was the showdown. Let's do the three-word review, shall we, first of all? And thank you to Barry for sorting these out and removing the ones which would have overextended the bleep button quite a lot. But Rugby Saracens, deeply disappointing defeat. Rue Hayford said becoming the norm. Oliver Archer, same old story. Kate, don't know your surname, Kate, but she said second half debacle. Neil Roberts, money back, please. Paolo Frutini, leader's voice missing. And then Slack, whoever Slack is, said, bring back @Owen_Faz. Well, we'll discuss Faz a little bit, thanks to Slack for getting our contractual obligation in there. But a lot of disappointment, Duncan, and I think quite a bit of anger, actually. People are not happy at the moment, are they? And it does seem to be an issue, as Rue Crayford said, becoming the norm.
Becoming the norm is very, very accurate. On Saturday morning, there was a post on the Saracens Fans Forum, I think it was, or the SSA, can't remember which, saying, oh, look at the state of the message board at Saints. They've just been walloped by Leicester, and goodness sake, they're calling for everybody to be sacked. Thank goodness we're not like that. Later on, we have a god-awful second half, an average first half and a god-awful second half. And you're right, people are angry. And I think it's because of that becoming the norm. We've seen it for a long time now. My feeling is that we're so much less than the sum of our parts. We do have some really, really good players. And this season, when they've gone off to play for England, they've been really good. And then they come back. I don't know whether they're knackered. They haven't been knackered in previous years. They've managed to put in a good performance at the Showdown, but something isn't gelling.
You're right. And I mean, what was interesting, obviously now I'm going to say thank you to Ollie Shapley, first of all, because last week, obviously, I went down to the training ground on Tuesday. The first day back, a lot of the guys are back, and I watched training, and it seemed that everybody was confident. Everybody was happy. Everybody seemed fresh, and they were, having fun. And you'd like to see that. And then they went into a session, and Joe Shaw was leading the session, and it was really high tempo. I thought these guys had just come back from international duty, but he obviously wanted them to hit the ground running. He wanted to reinforce the messages that perhaps might have been lost over the 6 or 7 weeks that these players have been away with their international sides. And it just seemed like, yeah, they look really good, really fresh, really. And then the Saturday, it was a complete sea change. Now, the timing of the game, you're right, Duncan. We've come back from international breaks and had the showdown. And like last year, we did it. International break, showdown, bang. We absolutely ripped Quins apart. This time, though, before the game, there would have been a lot of people turning around and saying, Quins have disrespected this massive game because Marcus Smith's on a sunbed in Miami. Danny Kerr was out injured. He had none of their internationals been away. We're in this game, which is when you've got a massive game with 55,000 people, you want the superstars all there. But they turned around and made a decision, which we've now got to make going into the Leicester game about players that we have to rest because there's an obligation for us to rest England's players. But we went fully loaded. And what's your explanation, Matt?
Why have I got to have one?
Because we don't know.
No, there's a few points to make, I suppose. There's the one tiny excuse, which was that we had an injury merry-go-round in the backs for most of the game. So that back line wasn't ever settled for more than 20 minutes at a time, and at one point included Andy Christie for some reason. When they brought off, I think, had to bring off Nick Tompkins, and rather than bring on Gareth Simpson and stick him on the wing, they brought Andy Christie straight on into the centres, and then McFarland had to go off. And so they brought Simpson on then, which I have no idea what was going on there. I think they were just utterly confused by that point. But, that is going to help with the flow of the game. But at the same time, I don't remember us cleanly catching a high ball that was under any pressure whatsoever, other than the dead easy ones. Every single one of them was dropped, whether it was Daly, Good, Tobias Elliott as well, shelling things all over the place, which, at least two of those have always been pretty decent under a high ball. And yeah, it's just the way we've been playing over the last few months. I mean, like Duncan said, you look at the individual players, they are good players. Well, they've shown they're good players for a long, long time, and their form individually hasn't dropped. But I do have a worry that it is how we're being coached to play. Ivan Van Zyl is not a box-kicking nine. He is best on his front foot, running at the line, quick passes. Fergus Burke is not Owen Farrell. Fergus Burke is Fergus Burke. And the second try that we scored was Fergus Burke at his absolute best, running that overlap line at pace and making meters. It is, individually fantastic. But all of a sudden, we just seem to revert to type. And I don't really get it. I'm not going to sit here and call for a revolution and to get rid of all the coaching staff and get rid of half the players. But we do need to evolve. And some people probably do need to look at themselves and go, well, yes, the club needs to evolve. And am I the right person to evolve with it? Can I evolve? Can I do that? And perhaps some of them can't. So something does need to change. I don't know what it is, but this type of performance has happened pretty frequently over the last, let's say, year. Back end of last season as well. It was coming. It's not just because we've had players leave.
My biggest concern was that I felt there was a level of complacency on Saturday. And I don't know whether you guys agree, but it came from Mufti Saturday. I mean, what is this? The one player in the pack who really played at the top of his level and had a really good game and made one superb tackle that if he hadn't have made it, Quins would have been away and scored, was Hugh Tizard. And Hugh Tizard was the one player who turned up at the Tottenham Stadium wearing Saracens training gear. You have Maro Itoje. Now, fair dues to Maro. You give him the opportunity to come dressed up like a male model. He's going to take that opportunity because he's got that about him. When I used to play, you played for the first team, blazer, club tie, that's what you turned up wearing because you are going to work. It's not comic relief day, put your red nose on. And I just felt there was this whole level of complacency that they looked at the Quins team and went, well, there's no Marcus Smith, there's no this, there's no that. And we'll look at all these players we've got. And then Theo McFarlane scores a fantastic try first 5 minutes. And we just went, this is easy. And nobody got the grasp of that and stopped them saying, this is not easy. We've got to work hard. And we did not work hard enough.
I don't know about the close. I don't know whether that affected their mentality. I think there was, especially in the first half, there were a couple more forwards like Theo McFarland and actually Jamie George who were trying. A couple of things going back to what Matt said. If you look at their first try, when that ridiculous substitution of Andy Onyama-Christie coming on and playing in the centre, if you look, they made the key break because I don't know whether he's still getting up to speed, and it wouldn't be surprising after that injury. He was completely in the wrong position to get the player who'd broken through one tackle. Quite often you'll see opposition players break the first tackle, but then there's usually 2 or 3 to get him next. And Andy Christie was ambling about 5 feet away because he didn't know where to be. And as you say, what the hell was going on with that substitution? The other thing that's strange is that it was only a few weeks ago, I think it was pretty much the same Quins team, wasn't it? Our Prem Cup team beat them.
Yeah.
You know, so what's going on there? The last point, I know just on the contractual commitment, there was a Zoom meeting a few weeks ago and Ollie Hartley came on. He was asked the question, what's been missed about Owen Farrell? And he said, do you know, the best thing Owen Farrell used to do was to analyse the opposition and tell us what the tactics were to break them down. And right now, we still don't have an attack coach. And it's mainly going forward that we still got the problems. We've had the problems all season going forward. And we had it again, especially, we didn't score enough when we should have scored more in the first half. And we didn't go forward at all in the second half. And we're talking about something being wrong. I think that's what it is. Now, we sorted it out from last season with the scrum by getting a decent scrum coach. While we don't want a revolution, Matt is absolutely right. I hope they're working on this because something's wrong.
This stems back quite some time. And I don't think anybody either thought that Owen Farrell would leave the club as quickly as he did, or didn't see it coming or didn't want to see it coming. And unlike when Owen was a 17-year-old kid breaking into the team, he had Glenn Jackson there and then Charlie Hodgson. He was learning off of really great standoffs. We persisted with Manu Vunipola, who we will all sit here and say that 5 years ago, we knew he was not going to make the grade at this level. But they persisted with him. They should have been looking at who was the Louis Johnson who we brought in now at 21 years old, or the Fergus Burke when he was that age, or whoever that may have been, to work with Owen Farrell, to shadow Owen Farrell, and to learn from him and get some game time, which probably would have extended Owen's career a bit because we wouldn't have been relying on him quite so much as we have been. But to learn, and now we're suddenly sat there that Owen went at the end of last season. We had to bring in 2 new standoffs who hadn't been around the club, and it's going to take them time. And that's where that pivotal position, someone took the eye off the ball there and did not plan correctly for that eventuality. You know, we'll talk about how good we are at recruitment and everything, but we've dropped an absolute testicle on this one, I think.
I think that's a fair comment. And you see a lot of criticism of Fergus Burke, but like Matt said, he actually did some really good things. He's not the finished article.
I agree with Matt. There's almost an element of fitting a round peg in a square hole or a square peg in a round hole here. Are we, coaching-wise, set in a way of doing something, and then we've gone out and got a player and we're trying to mould him into that? Instead of you get a player and you say, this is the skills why we like this player, so let's work on what he's got, make them better, but play around it. And if you've got a players at number 8, like Tom Willis is doing a great job at number 8, you know, and I didn't think he had too bad a game. The turnovers were winning and the back row were doing really great. In the first half, we beat up Quins at ruck time really effectively. That's what kept us in the game, is the fact that every time Quins went into a ruck, we turned them over or we beat them up or we pushed them backwards. So, you know, that's also good. So that's an integral player there who's really playing really well. Ivan Van Zyl and Fergus Burke are not being played to their strengths at the second. And Robitaille, you know, I mean, I'm not a coach at the same level as the coaches we got there, but I can see that. And, you know, I want Ivan Van Zyl whipping the ball out at 150 mile an hour and having ruck speed of less than 2 seconds. And Fergus Burke taking that ball at absolute pace that then brings in players. But at the moment, you seem to have a situation where it gets Nick Tompkins, who's running on empty and is not making the bursts and the busts he should do. And I think his confidence is low after the Wales debacle of the Six Nations. And Alex Zozowski at the moment, who, yeah, great in defence, but he is offering not enough in attack.
To be honest, that's where I was going to go. Like we've obviously spoken about the fact that you look at individual players and go, I don't think you can look at the 15 names we had in the starting lineup and go, oh, one of those is a weak link. We might need to get rid of them and replace someone. They're all individually fantastic players. Alex Lazowski was our best player for the first couple of months of this season. Got an England call-up and has then gone missing. But to be honest, that does seem to be something that we are lacking, is a bit of dynamism and a bit of bite in the middle of the field, in that 12-13 channel. And to be honest, out wide as well. Rotimi Şegun can't stay fit for more than 2 games. Tobias Elliott is a fantastic young prospect, brilliant try scorer, but has a lot of fundamental weaknesses in his game as well that are being found out. And, we do need reinforcements and we do need recruits. I look at the positives, though, and as Duncan said, our Prem Cup team beat something very similar to that Quins team, with a couple of senior players in it, but with a lot of good young players as well. Maro Itoje himself has spoken about the fact that he and others are basically holding the fort for those players to come through. There's a lot of talent there. We are producing players, but something isn't happening right at the moment. We're going to talk around in circles and try and figure out what that is. It's a big combination of things. There's no one solution. But yeah, maybe there are players in our current best 15 where you go, well, actually, if we need to evolve our playing style, maybe despite them being fantastic servants to Saracens and still being very good players, they're just not going to fit the mould of where we want the club to go. I don't know who it is, I don't know who goes, but it's really got to be thought about.
The 2 things to say about coaching any great sides, and if you look at the greatest coaches over the years in whatever sport it may be, whether it be cricket, whether it be football, whether it be rugby union, I'll give you the prime example, Alex Ferguson, the greatest manager of the Premier League era. He had no problems saying to players when they got to a certain period of time that, yeah, okay, you're still playing great football, but I can see you falling off the cliff. So therefore, before you fall off the cliff, I'll let you go. And it's not, you say there's a lack of sentimentality there. I don't think there is a lack of sentimentality there. You're actually turning around to players and saying, I'm going to let you go before you tarnish your reputation at this club through not being at the same level you were. And there's probably a certain element of Saracens did that with Owen Farrell, because you only have to look at what Owen's going through at Racing now. The fact that he spent the most of this season injured. And I know people are saying, well, we'd have Owen back tomorrow. And I say, well, I think you find with Owen Farrell now, he's 34 in September. He's having injury after injury after injury. He'll spend more time on the treatment table than he would on the fields. And that would break Owen, firstly. And secondly, it would really upset me as a fan, not only of the club, but of Owen Farrell, the player and the man. You see it so many times where players go back to their old clubs and try to recreate former glories, and it never worked.
What if we signed Owen Farrell as our attack coach for next season?
I was just going to say, I think it's a serious one. I'd have him back tomorrow as an attack coach. The salary cap permitting making the odd appearance. Unfortunately, if he's available to play, he counts towards the cap. So that'll be a choice, given how much he's been injured this season. I suspect that'll be a choice for Owen coming up soon. If he wants to come back to England, whether he can do it as a player or whether he's got to go into coaching.
We know that he'll be an excellent coach. He would be that one person who would make a huge difference to that coaching setup, not only because of his intelligence around the game, and he is a hugely intelligent person, but also you look at Owen Farrell, and we've talked about this about Mark McCorden. Is this his final 5-year spell, building up a team? Owen's the man who's going to take over from Mark McCorden, and then Owen's the man who will be leading England before he's 40 years old. I mean, that's going to happen. I'll go down Corals down and put a tenner on that he's England coach by the time he's 40. That's the career trajectory he will be on. But I think that if he did come back as a coach, that would be the only way that you'd have him back, Duncan.
I wouldn't put it like that. I would gladly have him back as an attack coach. He would be a great potential solution to our problems. And can I suggest one chink of light in all of this, which is, it's not proven yet, but look at how England were playing in the autumn series. Look at how England were playing, was it 2 matches ago against Scotland? They were bloody awful. They were kicking everything away because they didn't have the confidence to hang on to the ball when they got some really good backs. And now against France and Wales, yes, you've got to discount that. We've got to see what happens because Wales are not the best of teams, but they're starting to play to their strengths. even with Richard Wigglesworth as attack coach. So it can be turned around.
I think the other thing to look at as well, and this is, I quite often do this when things aren't going very well, but if we'd beaten Quins 15-10 in that game and sort of trundled our way to fourth place at the end of the season, losing a couple of games, winning a few more games and lost in our home semi-final, we might have looked at that as, okay, kind of what we expected from the season and not really thought about it very much. I think the fact that we've lost this game as well after having that reset means that there's nowhere to hide and change does need to be made.
And that's a very good point. And it ties into what you said earlier, Jez, about us not seeming to turn up or turning up. And maybe we think we've got this in the bag. Because look at that Newcastle performance, not just the result, but the performance. Abject, Castra, Ealing, bloody hell.
In previous seasons, there's the odd season where you sat there and thought, potentially we could go 100%. We could be, invincible this season. This season, we know that isn't going to happen. And in the last couple of seasons, we knew that wasn't going to happen. Last couple of seasons, you've had the odd game where there's been a poor performance. And even in years when we've won the Premiership, remember going to Wasps and getting trousers pulled down and our asses spanked, but we still won the whole competition that year. You can forgive the one game, maybe two games, one before Christmas, one after Christmas, where things happen, it just don't get out of the right side of the bed in the morning. But this season, it's been 4 or 5 games. And, the club will come out and say, we'll learn from it. Well, it's all well and good saying that, but it doesn't appear that they have learned from it. And that's the biggest issue here. We said at the start of the season, didn't we? We knew this was going to be a transitional season. We said not to get hopes up too high and expectations too high. And Matt, you and Duncan, from when we were at the AGM and we spoke to Joe Shaw, and they were very keen on talking about perhaps concentrating more on the development and the performances of players as opposed to the results, knowing that it was going to be a hard season. Yes, they wanted to be at the sharp end at the end of the season, and we could still be at the sharp end at the end of the season, but not to worry because it is a process and a journey that they are on now, a new beginning almost. But every time we've had a loss, like in Newcastle, we'll learn from this, we won't do it again. And then 3 weeks later, they've done the same thing, or 4 weeks later, they've done the same thing and they've had another rubbish performance. Now, the last 3 times it's happened this season, we've seen a response. And they've always talked about at the club on saying that, they don't think about the week before. They just go out there, they know what went wrong, they're just going to do. But we need to see a response again on Sunday. And we're going to Tigers, who are banging form. I mean, they blew away Northampton Saints. Didn't just beat Northampton Saints. They embarrassed Northampton Saints to the extent that, as you said, Duncan, earlier on, that they're calling for the night of the long knives of a team that won them the tournament the year before. When they're saying, you got to get rid of this, that and the other. And Franklin's Gardens was emptier than God knows what at 60 minutes. Everybody had buggered off home. So we're going to go to Tigers. We're going to have to rest players because we're contractually obliged to rest players. By the end of this weekend, we could be seriously in trouble because if other results go their way, you're looking at our nearest team. We'll have 34 points. Sale, potentially, they'll be on 41 points in 4th place. So we'll be 7 points shifted away. And in our last games, we've got Gloucester at home, Sale away, Falkers at home, Saints away, Bath at home. We play the way we did against Quins, Falcons, Gloucester at home, 10 points, you'd hope. That's not going to be enough to get us into the sticky end of the season, is it?
Well, you missed the potential battering. We've got the leaders of the top 14 away.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's one where you just get to everyone. I think you just got to write that tournament off because.
I think I'm getting a game then.
Sorry, I'll stick my hand up in the air. I'm going for it. I'm in training anyway because I've been training for a marathon. I'll tell you more about that in a bit.
You said about the atmosphere at the training ground. They were going hard at it. Everybody was looking forward. And yet the second half, we still got that same problem that we can't go forward. And I just wonder, they say, we'll learn from this. It looks like the Einstein's definition of madness taking place week after week out there.
If you go back to the end of January, obviously we had some big defeats. We lost to Castra and we were in I think we were pretty stroppy that week. And we said about the game against Exeter, we obviously didn't have a lot of international players around. And we said, we're not expecting to go down to Sandy Park and win, but we want to see something, see a different attitude and a different style. And we did lose to Exeter, but I think we all sat there and said, what, we have actually seen that they're trying something. And exactly the same thing has got to happen again. If we go to Leicester and lose, fine. But if we go to Leicester and lose and we see that they're actually trying something different, it will at least stop us, well, stop most people, not everyone, calling for the heads of everyone left, right and centre. And you don't write off the season, but you go, those 6-7 games, we're ripping up our playbook and starting again. And these 6-7 games are what set you up for next season. If we end up finishing 8th in the table, so be it. But if it means that next season we actually look like we're trying to play rugby, I don't mind that. I've spent my money on my season ticket and I want to see us win, but play the long game, definitely.
That's a really good point, Matt. We're all old enough to have remembered the days when Saracens came 8th after winning the last 2 games of the season when we looked like potentially getting relegated. And it was like a sigh of relief at the end of it. You're right, if we come 8th, but we've been trying things and, we've been saying to players that play your natural game, Fergus, run the ball, Ivan, stop kicking it, get those ruck speeds back up and running because the forwards are giving you that platform, then yes, I think we'll look at next season with a lot more optimism and say, yeah, fair enough, this has been a transitional season. I think the problem is that we know it was a transitional season, but I don't see a huge amount of transition in certain aspects of the game.
That is basically what we're saying, is that it's the same mistakes, or what appears to be the same mistake, the same deficiencies, let's put it like that, seem to be appearing game after game when the players are so much better than that.
I think we could go on forever about this and we would be in... I think there would be an awful lot more debates around this on the various forums and everything. And I think, yes, you're quite right. And yes, I think there is quite a bit of disappointment and anger about, and I think it's quite justified. So hopefully people at the club will listen to what people are saying, not just us here on the Fezcast, but all around, and just have a think about it. And as I say, not for us to be the coaches, although I'd love to put my 2 pence in at some point, and maybe you never know. But yeah, I think we'll end that part of it there, and then we could come back and let Duncan have a little bit of a rant about something else. Get something else off your chest, Duncan.
Oh, it's not a rant, it's a suggestion.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back to our last part, and let's have a bit of a discussion about something not got your goat as such, Duncan, but has spiked your interest and has got you thinking about a few things, and that's the proposal that's been put out that is going to be trialled, that away fans get an end or a section and a congregation, and like everything, people have read the headlines and not necessarily read the meat. You've got something to say about this, because there has been quite a lot of reactions and knee-jerk reactions to what basically is just an idea and a trial to see how it works, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a rant. It's just an observation. I think that's right. People looked at a headline and leapt to all sorts of conclusions. So this is the idea that's been floated by the Premiership, I think, that there should be a designated area for those away supporters who would like to be with other away supporters. Now, huge amount on social media of people saying this is going to destroy the nature of rugby because we want to mingle with other fans, etc. Well, they're not saying you can't. They're not saying if you're an away fan, you must buy a ticket in this area. They're just saying that if you want to, you can buy a ticket in this area. And it is relevant because, as you know, this season I've been helping David Loxham out with the allocations for away games for the SSA. And we know that there are a huge amount of people who, when they go to away games, want to sit with their fellow supporters. That's why they buy their tickets through the SSA, because they can easily go on the other team's website, as many do, and buy a ticket wherever they want to sit. So there is a huge amount of demand for this. And there are some clubs, and I will tell you who they are. They are Quins and Gloucester, primarily in the Premiership, and Munster were the same. And there are others who deliberately block away fans doing this so that they don't congregate. Because when you go away with the SSA, the first thing you'll notice is they make a good amount of noise because they are hardcore supporters all together and they enjoy that. And at Saracens, we already have an area in the West Stand where the equivalent of David Loxham at other clubs can book that area so that all their fans can sit together. So it's just giving fans the choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really don't see a problem with it. I mean, I think the important thing is that if clubs do this, and every club should offer a block of 100 seats, for argument's sake, 200 seats, whatever it may be, the demand may be. But they also should put them in an area that isn't like the Wreck for Bath, where you're down in one corner and they make sure that the rain always goes in your face down there, and you've got to walk through a bunch of rabid Bath supporters who are going to give you a bit of abuse as you go across to it. You know, it's got to be encompassing, it's got to be welcoming, it's got to be in the spirit of the game. And actually allowing clubs to have that area is very much in the spirit of the game, because you're turning around and saying, look, we don't care if your gang comes to our home and makes lots of noise, it's going to add to the atmosphere. And that's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
The point is as well, they're not saying that fans should be segregated. They're just saying there is an area there because it will improve the atmosphere at games. I believe it will. I go further because I was speaking to somebody on Saturday who went to the varsity game at StoneX and said that 3,000 people at the varsity game made one heck of a load of noise and created a fantastic atmosphere. And then we went into the Tottenham Stadium and saw 55,000 people produce quite a low volume hum. Felt like a hum in a morgue. And it's often the same at StoneX. So I think, A, concentrated away supporters will hopefully provoke Sarries supporters to make more noise. There's a good atmosphere at times, isn't there? But a lot of the times it's very quiet. I would go further and say that Saracens should create an area for home supporters who want to congregate together and make a noise.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm not sure whether a bunch of boozed up toffs going, yeah, is something I'd want to listen to. I mean, I've been to many varsity matches because basically it was a good day out on the beers. But yeah, I completely agree with you there, Duncan. I mean, what's your thoughts, Matt?
I mean, my season ticket at the StoneX is in the South Stand, which is kind of the second area for away fans. If they don't sort of get that little block in the West Stand, they're usually scattered around the South Stand. And they do generate a fair amount of noise because any away fan, they're going because that's what they want to do. It doesn't necessarily increase the atmosphere very much because it's also the stand where a lot of the kids waving the flags and kids playing touch rugby at half time all sit, and they don't generate the atmosphere quite as much. So in the experience I've got of that, it's kind of tricky to really judge what an impact it's going to make. I don't think that the home fans in the South Stand make any more noise because of the presence of the away fans, other than, and to be honest, it is a bit boring. Anytime the away fans start singing, about a dozen people just start going, Sarries, really lazily, just to try and drown it out a bit. But yeah, if there's a big block, and tactically we could have a big block of some of our more vocal fans next to that, yeah, it makes for a better atmosphere. But the way it runs at the moment, I don't know that it necessarily works like that.
I think you've got a valid point there because, you know, when the whole stadium's doing the Sarries, it can be pretty good, but actually it's quite a dirgy chant.
Works at Gloucester, though, doesn't it? So, I mean...
Well, it's all over rugby, isn't it? But it can be quite dirgy. There's been various initiatives that have failed horribly in the past. They may fail again. But by putting an organised bunch together who perhaps have got the will to start something new, you might get some interesting things coming out.
What we needed was Bob Dylan to write a song 65 years ago that mentioned Saracens that we could have sung along with or whatever. But there you go. That's for a different podcast. But look, gentlemen, I think that's really good. And again, it's another debate that will rumble on and on and on and on and on. Now, quickly, can I just mention my quick bit of news? Because I did sign up a couple of weeks ago. I'm back running. My injuries are good. So I'm signed up for the Yorkshire Marathon, which is happening on October the 19th this year, start of next season. But I'm going to be running the marathon. And as ever, I'm going to be raising money for the Motor Neurone Disease Association. So if you want to donate to me by Just Giving site, we'll put the links up and everything. But between now and then, the first 182 donations of a £5 So there you go. It's a challenge. I've got to get 182 £5 donations in. Will get a minute in the blind sweepstake on my finishing time. So if you get drawn the minute in which I finish the racing, you win 100 quid. So basically, Duncan, I can see you looking confused there. People out there can't. Basically, just send me a £5, Duncan, and you'll get a minute. And if I finish in that minute, you'll win some money.
That's one of the most compelling offers I've heard all year, Jez.
Just give me a £5. That's all you need to do, all right? And you might get something out of it.
As long as that 182-minute window isn't from 0 to 3 hours and 2 minutes, because I think we might need to push it a little bit further.
No, it will start at 3 hours and it will finish at 6 hours, with a sub-3 hour being one of them and a do not finish being the other. So there we go. Anyway, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you, Matt and Duncan, for your time again. Always lovely to speak to you guys, even in a week where it hasn't been particularly good news or particularly enjoyable rugby to talk about, but it gave us something to talk about, didn't it? But thank you everybody for listening in, and we'll be back with you on the 2nd of April, day after April Fool's Day. There we go. So I wonder what's the jolly jakes we could get up to the day before there. But yeah, that's till next week. In the meantime, say thank you everybody for listening in, and we'll say ta-ra from the Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.